We have two wonderful speakers coming up next. First of all, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Rima Salah, who is chair of the Early Childhood Peace Consortium and also former Deputy Executive Director of UNICEF. Rima, across her long career with UNICEF, has travelled all over the world and worked to bring positive change to some of the most challenging conflict-affected areas of the world. She has welcomed us to UNICEF, to her vast and rich networks, and also into her home in New York. She's unparalleled in her work and her spirit. We are honoured to have you with us this morning, Rima.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning. I will address Professor Patrick Johnston. We thank him to be here with us this morning. He's the President as Vice Chancellor. Professor Paul Connolly, Director of the Center for Evidence and Social Innovation, and Dr. Siobhan Fitzpatrick, CEO, Early Years, Northern Ireland. Distinguished participants, friends and colleagues, it gives me great honor and pleasure to participate in this very important conference held in this beautiful and historic city. Belfast and its people are for the world a symbol of wisdom and courage, who had the vision to build peace, ensuring the future of their children and the generations to come. I would also like to pay tribute to also you, Professor Patrick Johnston, President and Vice Chancellor, who's not here, but you will give him the word, to Professor Paul Connolly, and also to Dr. Laura Dune for your commitment and dedication to improve the lives of children, of their families and their communities, and this through research and practice. Also, I would like to express my deepest appreciation to Madam Siobhan Fitzpatrick for your vision, leadership, and conviction that investing in the early years of life of the child is a path to peace. And you spread the word, you spread the good message, not only here in Northern Ireland, but in many parts of the world. I wish also to express my sincere gratitude to all of you participants. Your presence here is a testimony of your dedication to the well-being of children and families. You have put your knowledge, you have put your science, and most importantly, your practical experience at the service of peace. This peace that we talk about, 70 years ago, when the members of the United Nations met first time in San Francisco, they pledged for peace. In the charter, in the UN Charter, they said, "We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind, and to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women, and of nations large and small." As 72 years after, as the United Nations continues, maybe baby steps, to its journey to further advance the ideals of the United Nations and fulfill the goals of the Peace Charter. Yes, it is a beacon of hope still for all humanity, as it provides food for people, 90 million people now in 80 countries. It vaccinates 50% of children. Also, it assists refugees and works in 193 countries to combat climate change. Most importantly, it protects human rights, civil rights, cultural rights for people. It also mobilizes millions of dollars for emergencies and uses diplomacy to prevent conflict. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have more than 128,000 women and men serving under the blue flag in almost 40 missions across 4 continents. And their work is to bring peace to those countries. But also, after 72 years, it also witnessed recent triumphs, which is the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, the adoption of the resolution on youth, peace and security, which is reinforcing the role of youth in building peace, the plan of action to prevent violent extremism, the sustaining peace resolutions, and the New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants, which was recently adopted in September. We had also 3 reviews at the United Nations, which are also key for change, and one of them is Uniting Our Strength for Peace, Politics, Partnership and People, that was prepared by a high-level panel on peace operations. We have another important report from the advisory group of experts. That was prepared by the Peacebuilding architecture. And also a third one, which is important, it's preventing conflict, transforming justice, securing the peace. And that was prepared by the global study on the implementation of Resolution 1325, which says, with 1325 says that the role of women in building peace is very important and key. In the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda is very important and historic. Why is it historic? Because 193 member states said that they will leave no one behind. They said again, like they said 72 years ago, we the people who are embarking today on the road to 2030, we will involve governments as well as parliamentarians, the UN system and other international institutions, local authorities, the indigenous people, civil society, the scientific and academic community, and that's why we are here at Queen's today, and all the people are involved. It is the agenda of the people, by the people, because it's 17 goals, from ending poverty in all its forms everywhere to ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education, to reducing inequities with and among countries, to achieving gender equality, to taking action to combat climate change, and to promoting peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, where the result of broad consultation, even of children, as my colleague Marta Santos Pais said. After that, we have also the sustaining peace resolutions that were adopted at the Security Council and the General Assembly in April last year. It is a transformative agenda. It is an agenda of peace, of justice, most importantly, and development. This transformative agenda, for the first time, recognizes the direct link between peace, between justice, and between development, and the responsibility of all the countries in the northern sphere and in the southern sphere, and people to achieve the global vision of the agenda to have a peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. Most importantly, societies that are free from fear and violence, as articulated in Goal 16. When we talk about the groundbreaking resolutions on sustaining peace that mark a conceptual shift from peace building to sustaining peace as a transformative and forward-looking. Let me also maybe try to define what is sustaining peace now for the United Nations. It's preventing the outbreaks, the escalation, the continuation and recurrence of conflict, addressing root causes, ending hostilities, ensuring national reconciliation, and moving towards recovery, reconstruction, and development. So peace building is no more confined to post-conflict situations, but applies to all phases, before the conflict, during the conflict, and post-conflict. Peace building is a political process that spans prevention, and that's why we work for children and with children. Prevention, mediation, conflict management, and resolution. And these resolutions now are seen as a pledge. It's a pledge from all of us, from the international community, to go beyond more mere rhetorical commitment to devise innovative, concrete, and lasting solutions. And we believe it's a core task of the United Nations, and we are all the United Nations. So it's an integrated and coherent approach among all relevant actors, including the United Nations system, all the system, consistent with their mandates, and the UN Charter is also critical to sustain peace. But also, the resolutions reaffirm the importance of partnership, and that's why we are all here. We are extending all our arms to each other and say that we are going to work together for peace. It is also all segments of society, the communities, the families, women's groups, religious leaders, youth groups, to prevent conflict and sustain peace in the world. We have also, as you know, we are all suffering, all the world, all regions of the world, from violent extremism. So there is a plan that was launched last year, a plan of action to prevent violent extremism, and it's a very important part of the office now of the Secretary General of the United Nations. But it also includes conflict prevention, it includes good governance, it includes engaging communities also to prevent violent extremism, empowering youth, in education, in security. Education, even early childhood development is mentioned in this plan. And of course, communication among all of us. The link between peace and development is very important. And if you see all these resolutions that I mentioned, they are not only written on papers, but we need to implement them. And the thread that is running through all these timely landmark resolutions is the strong linkage between sustainable peace and security and sustainable development and human rights. There is no development without peace and no peace without development. So we now at the UN, we have three important columns as you look at them, which is maintaining peace and security, sustainable development goals, and human rights. They all are linked together, and it should be implemented together. So the way forward is that these three pillars will pave the way to respond to the multitude of challenges that face the international community today. Needless to say, the situation of the world is not very good. As you know, last year the previous Secretary General said it's the worst since World War II. And why is it bad? Because we have the numbers of wars maybe are less, but the way the war is done is different. And it's targeting civilians. And that is why it's important. And today we have millions of children of families that find themselves trapped in situations of war and violence and conflict that disrupt the fabric of their societies. As you know, you work in the field and you see, and compromise the very foundation of their institutions. They lose all, aspects of, their institutions. The family is even destroyed sometimes. And, of course, as Marta Santos Pais said, the abuses perpetrated against children are appalling in the midst of today's armed conflict, when their communities and homes are no more safe havens, and their schools even become battlefields. The growing crisis for refugees and migrant children, we know that we have now more than 65 million people that are displaced. And 50 million, according to UNICEF, 50 million children have migrated across borders or have been forcibly displaced. And 28 million have been uprooted for horrific conflict and violence. But there is always hope, because we are working for people. We are working for children. And we have hope because there is the rise of civil society. We met them and they said, listen to us. We are no more not only victims, but we can be agents of change and drivers of peace in our communities. And that's why we are saying that even children can be drivers of change in their community. So the rise of civil societies and their will to work for the service for peace. We met, when I was meeting many in different countries, we met a woman who stood up and said, you, the United Nations, are a failure because you don't consult with us. We can be also part of the solution. So this is good for women that are here and men that support us. So we are all for the cause of peace. So how do we keep this hope? There is hope, but how do we keep the hope? How do we translate commitments into strategies and programs to make a difference in the lives of children and their families? Yes, we can, and this is all, we say that there is a new era of peace. This is the hope. A new era of peace at the United Nations, a new agenda for peace in the world, and this is compounded by really the commitment of the new Secretary General, who is from Europe, Mr. Antonio Guterres, who said his priority is not of many priorities, but the priority is really the prevention of conflict and working on the underlying causes of conflict, and also using his good offices for mediation and solving the problems in a peaceful way. So for all this, we need innovations, right? We need innovative solutions that are required to address the policies and global action necessary to reduce violence, as well to build and sustain peace. And that's why we come to our Early Childhood Peace Consortium that I will talk about, because advancement in science suggested new opportunities to contribute to sustainable peace through investment in early development of young children. And that's why investing in the early years of life and its transformative power to build peace became our entry point for advocacy with the United Nations, with member states that start, if you want to build peace, start with children, invest in children. The journey has not been easy, but we're trying there. They always ask us for evidence, and that's why we are here. We are here to find the evidence here at Queen's universities and, of course, other universities, Yale and Harvard and all the universities, and particularly the universities in the Global South that are really working on this and practically working with people, fighting every day to improve the lives of women and children. Of course, the science confirms this, the neuroscience, epigenetics, psychology. I will not dare to talk about it. Professor Leckman will be more eloquent about all this. But I want to tell you that the early childhood development as a path to peace, then we thought we launched an Early Childhood Peace Consortium, ECPC, in September 2013. And just to say that, of course, there were founding members from Turkey, Ashev, Yale University, UNICEF, Alliance of Civilizations, FETSER, but also the early years. And it also came from Northern Ireland here. And thank you for your support. Early Childhood Peace Consortium had a vision to create an inclusive movement for peace, social justice, and prevention of violence through using evidence-informed early childhood development strategies. Our mission is founded on the idea that the global community must address root causes of violence and conflict, and that children and families can be agents of change for peace. Some of its goals is to link emerging knowledge on ECD and peace building, to contribute to the debate on peace building, to disseminate information, to assist partner organizations, but also to join with member states to advocate for the drafting of a UN resolution on ECD and peace building. You know, UN resolutions are very important because they guide the way, and people and member states become accountable to report to the United Nations. Until now, we have resolutions on early childhood. Maybe we have resolutions on peace building, but we don't have resolutions that link early childhood to peace building. And this is very important. Although we have other resolutions, for example, that appeared last year on early childhood in the culture of peace, that early childhood development also contributes to the culture of peace. So there is a call to action. We have a lot to do, but I'm sure with the commitment of every one of us, we'll achieve our goals. Because we have science, we have the knowledge, the technology, and the experience. We have the experience here in the room to build a world without violence. What we need is an unfailing vision and unwavering commitment by the global community, as well as a strong partnership for children, and with children and their families. So I think let us all start together erecting building blocks of a peaceful future for children, thus changing the tide of violence and building peace. So I think let us focus our actions on children and its impact on children, and our action and how they impact children, and also to align ourselves with the measurement framework and partnership with Queen's University. I thank you very much and just want to remind you that the time is now. We should do it now, otherwise we'll be too late. And we owe it to the children and the families of the world. I thank you very much for your commitment.